Hello and welcome to the Service Operations Podcast. I am your host, 𝗖𝗿𝗄𝗏. Our guests are from different industries and functions. They will share their experience, strategies, and the changing landscape to help you take the service operations of your business to the next level. Hi, Pamela. It's so nice to have you on this podcast. When I was thinking about the career in service or service-based industries, one of the topmost persons I thought of was you. And for 2-3 reasons that I thought that you'll be the best person for this podcast. So the first one was that, you have moved from organization to organization. Second is you have moved upwards and you have changed gears from one, kind of role to another. So please tell us about, how you started and where you are now, and we'll take the podcast forward.
Hi, 𝗖𝗿𝗄𝗏. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to meet you always. I think we had a very long association, but I definitely can talk about my journey. I think I never thought that I would be a career woman. From the era that I come in, generally, your parents believe that you would become like a teacher. That's the only profession that they thought about. And in most of the forums that I go, people just ask me that with 30 years of experience, that what made you break that? Because everyone thought that, okay, if you want to do a job, it has become a teacher. So it was first, breaking the barrier at home, making them realize that there is more to a woman. First you have to fight internally from the house rather than you go to the external. So I think my husband was very supportive in that way. And I think my in-laws were also very supportive, because I started my journey after having a small child. And that's when I said that there is more to me rather than just being a housewife. So I did a couple of courses. I did my postgraduate, and then I realized that, okay, let's do something. It's just that your parents have taught you doesn't mean that you just have to sit at home. So I joined a company. Yeah, I would not name the companies, if that's okay.
Yeah, we are perfectly fine with that.
So I joined a very renowned organization into a sales division, and I thought, I do not know, people felt that there is a knack in me to do selling, and it was a very tough sales because there was no tangible product to it. So it's an intangible thing that you are entering into a media and you're selling a space onto it. And that's where my first education happened. It's not only that the education is in the classroom, even on a day-to-day life, you can learn that. So that's what happened with me. I learned and I realized that, you really have to work around. Everyone is there. You need to identify that what are you good at, right? So your manager can support you, but you really need to see that, okay, what is it that I can do better? So I started my career from sales, and being for a couple of years with them, I really broke the stereotype at that time. Having a telemarketing was just a concept. And I felt that why are we just going and looking for people to invest into your project? Why can't you just call them up, and rather than wasting your time? So I created a project plan for that. At that time, such a young career, but I always thought that what I can do differently, because you want to be a little bit different from others. How can I create a charter for me to go into a higher space? So I created this telemarketing concept and I presented. I do not know, when I look back at today, I think it was just a couple of pages. You didn't realize how the things were done, but I think my management understood and they let me set it up, and it was great success. So once I felt that I have achieved what I want to do, and that's where my knack for training started. I started grooming people. I felt that whatever I have learned, I should give it back, because then in double fold, I will get it back. So that was my philosophy. And with the sales stint for a couple of years, I thought, service industry came into view. And I said, and people said, oh, can you join a bank into a service? And I said, okay, I've never done service and you're making me go a ladder above, but will I be able to do it? And then I said, okay, let me look at what service is all about. And I said, service is no different from sales. If you can sell, services exactly the same as.
You're
So,
there.
I
Yeah.
went for this interview with an MNC bank, and they really asked me that you're not from a service industry. How are you coming here? And I said, tell me what is the difference between sales and service? And they didn't have an answer. Because I believe that if you have the conviction and if you are able to convince the person, equally, service is also like a sale. So I entered into this organization, and that was my first into a credit card industry, and that was a pure play of service. And that's where I understood that service is not just picking up the phone, answering emails. Chat was not there at that time. I'm talking about a long era,
Yeah, yeah, it's a long time. In
long
fact,
time.
even emails were not there really.
Yeah,
It was only calls.
email started in my
Yeah, but very less.
very rare.
Yeah,
So, I started looking at things, and I started developing certain training programs for people to understand that few of the things that I would say that became very very important for me, and which really helped me rise the ladder, is that look at the problem. If there is a problem, I think that's great, because it gives you a place where you can start from, and then you can solve it. If there are no problem, you don't even understand where to start from, where to start looking. So first of all is problems are good to have. I'll just say that, because that has been my journey of solving those problems, which has made me think out of box. You read a lot of things into the books which talks about services A, B, and C, but when you come into reality, I think you need to look it from a holistic view. You cannot just look at, okay, the books say that you need to have team management, you need to have, humility and everything. Of course, that is important. But what is very important is to have a problem solving skills. If you have that, I think you would then start thinking out of box. Don't just think onto a stereotype. And that's what I did. And the learning can happen anywhere. So then the one thing I learned is you just don't learn from your managers. You also learn from the people you're working with. So your colleagues are your source. They are young blood. They come with new thought process. They are ready to experiment, because when you go higher up, your propensity to take, you propensity to take some risk goes down. But one thing, and that is where I learned from this particular bank, is that you can learn. Everyone can be your guru. So I learned that. And then the best thing that happened is the most difficult part is the change management. How you adapt. The change doesn't only happen into your role, it happens in your life, and there is a constant change which is happening. So you need to adapt to that change. If you are resistant to that change, then it will be very difficult for you to grow up. So I think I will give all the credit to this particular bank, which taught me that how important change is in today's world. I'm talking about
yeah.
20
So
years
let
back.
me, yeah, yeah. So let me just ask you one question now. One is the education, which is the classroom education. We everybody graduates, we go to college. That is one kind of education. And now, because in the current times, people also have they do courses, etc. They are available online. Those kind of things are available now. So these both, if we take those as education, when you actually go to do a job, so things are different. So what do you think, yeah, how do you think this education, which is the curriculum based college, and the other things that you learn, how do you use them when you're actually working? Because there is a perception, sorry, there's a perception that if you are highly qualified, you get better jobs, you can do better, then you can do well, and you succeed in life based on your education alone. So what is your thought on that?
See, education cannot guarantee success, Satinder. It can only increase the propensity of getting more opportunity. But education has never, made you rise in life. Of course, your entry point is because of the education and how you are conducting. But I feel, after education, what you have, which is, created the base for you, it creates the base. But it is not necessary. I can take my example because I did most of my education after my marriage and some during working time also. And I felt that what is very important is to first be very clear. And I think today's children are very clear that what field they need to go in. In our time, there were not so many options. Either you become a doctor, teacher, or a engineer, right? So, but in today's scenario, people are so much aware that what is it. So once you've set your goal, that what you need to be, I think you start working in that. So one is that you do a pure, your graduation, that happens. But when you join into any organization, you need to learn things. That is why they say when you do an MBA, it is much better if you do it after some years of experience, because that gives you a better perspective. But some children, after graduation, they straight away go for an MBA. They are not able to understand the nitty gritty which is required, which can help them in better cultivate the values that are being shared while you're going through the MBA. I've seen that difference because I did it after my couple of years of experience, and that really helped me to understand that how which direction I need to take, what is right and what is the right set, what I need to follow. One is that path you do. Second is that once learning should never stop. Even today, if there are, because in this VUCA world, things are changing so rapidly. So it's very important to keep yourself aware about technology, because technology is taking away the service industry, right? So you need to understand technology. You need to, aligned with it. If you just say that, okay, I've done my graduation and now I enter into service industry and I will immediately rise the ladder, it doesn't happen. So you need to be aware. So there are two things that I will talk about which becomes important. And what I did in my career was I started reading a lot about leadership. I started not about manager. you know uh, Rising the ladder is not just becoming a manager. So I started understanding the difference between a leader and a manager, and how that you need to work. I read one of this book which is called 1 Minute Manager. It's a very interesting one which is really stuck with me a lot. That people will come with a lot of problems to you. Please tell them to come with a solution, and don't come with one solution. Come with two, three, four solution, and make them make a decision themselves rather than you making a decision for them, because that's how you are creating leaders within. Otherwise, you are there today, you may rise the ladder, who's the other one coming in? So you need to share those things with them. So I generally follow that rule. If my team is coming with me with a problem statement, I generally tell them that you know the problem the best, and you also have the solution within. So come back with a couple of solutions. Maybe it will be a combination of two, three areas which we can combine together, and maybe that's the answer. Even after that, the solution does not come out, I'm still sitting there to help you.
Yeah, and always, in this changing times, it's not always, one doesn't always have a solution. One has to actually figure it out sometimes, and then you need many brains to do that figuring. But now, just coming back to, your movement. So, one you said is you started off with selling space. So, that was one was selling. From that, you moved to service. Okay, so there was one kind of a transition, and you moved company also. So, you moved to a bank. So, what was the next step? What
I
was the
joined as
role
an
that you played?
assistant manager for the service industry, and then I, realized that there is more to the service rather than just being, picking up the phone. So first, I tried to analyze that how we should do service, because somebody who's calling you is only calling you because there is a need. So first is how do I make that conversation happy? So, what I did was, I always feel that when you're happy, it reflects in your voice. So when you are running a shop of about 100 people and there are receiving about 10,000 calls, after 10th, 15th call, your smile goes down and
Fatigue.
fatigue sets in. So what I did was I put a mirror in front of everybody's desk. Because whenever you look at yourself, the first thing that you do is smile at yourself. So when you have a mirror right in front, so what was happening was that all the calls were with a smile, and that translates into your language to the other person. So I
Yes.
realized
Voice and
that
language.
lower down my escalations with respect to, my queries not getting sorted. So I tried little different. So there are no rocket science to it. I think it's just that you look at what does the customer need. So that's a small gesture I did in there, which really brought a sea change. The kind of escalations we were coming went down. People were more happy. The CSAT score improved, and I got an opportunity to share those learnings with across the other global leaders that were there. And of course, second thing that I spoke about to my team is that when you're looking at somebody is calling you and there is a problem statement, think that if you were in the same shoe, how would you react? And how would you like somebody to solve it for you? I think these two things, these are no rocket science, but if you do that, that's what helped me in this bank. And then I moved gears. I believe that in the service industry, if you are not a revenue generator, it's very difficult for you to go at a higher level. So I started looking at, and then I joined another bank, which was an Indian bank. And again, when I joined there, I realized and that how can I do things differently? Because service is one part, but can service become a revenue generator for the organization? And I felt why not? So I started reading what are the banks across the globe are doing, and that's where the concept of cross selling came in. Because one person maybe has a need for a house, of course will have a need for a bank, will have a need of a card. So one, you don't need to look for different people, but the bank offers many products today. You are investing, you have a lot of money, you need to invest, you just don't do FDs now. So you went into equity market. So one person having multiple needs and bank offering multiple products, why can't we sell the same thing, different things to the same person? So that's when I looked at it, and I think the bank was very supportive in understanding that concept. And I said, which is the touch point where maximum people get connected? And that definitely is the customer service center. So from a smaller bank to a bigger bank, you realize that when you're doing it complete pan India basis, it becomes important that if there are tens and thousands of customers are touching base, look at the opportunity that you're getting to do cross selling. So that's where I
Yeah.
always looked out of box and did that. That's one thing which came
But
up.
uh, there was one more thing, in fact, which you haven't mentioned. You were in an established bank where you were doing service. When you shifted to the Indian private bank, was to set up the center. Okay. Yeah. So now the thing is that what I'm just trying to understand and gather is that it's not just one is that it is not going to be the same work that one does forever. So one keeps changing because everything changes around you, right? So you have things like technology changes happen, regulatory changes happen, new products come into the market. So there are lots of things. So while we say service, basically also the definition of service keeps changing from time to time. So the what I'm understanding from you is that one needs to keep being of value to the organization in whichever form. So either in the form of serving, and now you say that one can't just only do sales, so one has to become a revenue generator, and then that's how the next step comes in. And also you need to find newer ways of doing things. But the difference between when you were individually handling something, that is when you were, maybe taking calls yourself, versus when you became a manager, what was one big change that happened, as far as a skill is concerned?
I was doing it individually, I was answerable just to myself. But when you have a team, you're responsible for the team as well. And that's when I realized, it was not an easy journey for me, Satinder, for making a jump from a individual contributor to a role where I'm leading the team. So it was very difficult. And generally in those days, your promotion did not just happen on your performance. You were also required to go through a written test and certain kinds of interview to see that you are eligible to go to a higher cadre. And I failed miserably. I'm very honest about that. I failed miserably. I thought that I'm excelling as an individual contributor means that I am ready to go to the next level. And when I got, even though I cleared my written test, but in the interviews, they realized that my thought was still very, very individual focused. And that's when I started reading that, okay, what is the difference that if I need to become a team player, how should I start behaving? So I started reading books with respect to that. That, right now, you may excel doesn't mean that, you have all your five fingers are not of the same size. How are you thinking that if you're excelling and if you will culcate or inform what you have done to your other team members, they will also follow. It is easier to listen, but it's very difficult to follow what the other person is saying. So what I changed when I went through this, and the next year when I again applied, I became a manager. The only difference that I did was, whenever making any decision or doing things, I tried and analyzed in such a way that the people felt that the decision was theirs, it was not mine. So that is a difference which I started creating, that rather than putting my thoughts and saying this is what needs to be done, I actually took it out from them that this is what we have to do. So I was making them move in that direction. I was posing questions, or I was, trying to move that in that direction. So once everyone, it is coming from a team that this is what we need to do, they will do it with conviction, and they will definitely try to excel because they will feel that it was their decision to do it. So that's a
Yeah.
difference
So
which I created.
basically, yeah. So basically, it is when you're an individual contributor, you're thinking about yourself and work. But when you become a manager or you start handling a team, then it is work as well as handling the people. So the people skills, I think, need to develop when you move from an individual contributor to a management role, which could be a team leader or a manager. So that was your second major shift in terms of growth. Yeah. So, I mean, you gave us good insights on, how you move from an individual contributor to a manager. And then, what are the skills required and what is the role that education plays and what is the self-learning that one needs to do. Um, Now tell us, what was the next step that you took and, what exactly did you do there?
See, after doing sales and understanding that sales has a lot of flavor connected with service, I identified that service is the core. If you can do service, you can go into any direction you want to. See, it's not only relating to that you need to be associated with the bank. Service is one thing which is applicable across different domains, whether it is into a banking stream or into a wealth management, or if you go into telecom or hospitality, it's all there. But even beyond, these domains, I'll say that you can also make a career change with respect to moving into different departments. Like my next stint was to move into a marketing division. So I had done, into banking, I did service, I did being an auditor myself, because running the audit function, to see that how the auditings are happening, see that if the processes are aligned and we are ISO certified. So that was another stint that I took in. And then training development, of course, if you understand service, that is another area. But I took a different area. I said, let's move into marketing. And I said, how different is marketing from servicing? And again, I followed the same philosophy that what are the customer needing at? So when I joined this MNC bank, so I moved back into an MNC, and this is one of the company which had very limited, employees, and it believed in doing most of the work, the operational work was being done by the outsourcers, like you have vendors which are available. So it was a very different experience for me. And I looked at that, what is it that you're trying to do? So I moved into a division where you need to create new programs where a person can start using their credit card more, because the bank earns when you're using the credit card, whether it is into a normal shopping or whatever. And I started working with the team in what kind of programs can be created, how it can help. And that was my first in that now you're moving away from your own employees and you are now working with a vendor and their employees. So a very big shift for me, because here these guys are not reporting into you, but your performance is evaluated based on to how the vendor is performing. So again, a shift in the gear, because, and it is very interesting, the more challenges you have, it really helps you think out of box. If you follow the same routine, sometimes you try you try to do what you have already been comfortable with. So I try to do different things so that I can have a holistic understanding of the whole process. So first of all, I tried and looked at that. And of course, there is a revenue which is attached to it because the people need to use their credit card more. And we had the MasterCard guys coming to our office and they were talking about that how can you increase the spend? What is it that you can do differently? So what I did was, first of all, I took that, vendors, of course, they are vendors and you pay them for the performance that they do, but somewhere you're also responsible for their success. So I started, making the team understand that what work you're doing and why you're doing it. Some people just come up and you get the telemarketing calls that, okay, do you need a loan? Do you need a home loan? No, that's not the way. So I changed the scenario. I said, first, understand the concept. Why are you doing it? What is in it? And how it is going to benefit that person. So I created the stories. So I created certain user stories for them to talk about different scenarios, how people behave in a different way. If you look at, I started, and that's where my understanding of the data started. I felt that data is very powerful and you need to read the data. It's very difficult to say, how can you read the data?
Yeah,
But data,
yeah. You have to make sense of the data.
you can read the data. It can tell you a lot of things which direction you need to take. Like I'll share an example that we were working with one of other banks and we were sourcing their insurance, that you take a personal insurance, medical insurance. So that was another way of increasing, and you can pay the premium through your card. So that will generate the revenue for this particular bank. So when that scheme came in, I felt that we have millions and millions of card data in that bank. And we said, now you can't call up, because if you have called each and every individual, you need to have a massive scale of about 1,000 people to manage it. So I said, let me not do that. Let me read the data. And I worked with my operations team and I said, can you throw back what does this data looks like? Can you look back at last 3 months data and tell me how many people have used their card on medical bills? How many have gone to the hospital and used their card? Where are you seeing pharmacy transactions coming? And that reduced down the million data to a couple of 100,000. With that 100,000, then you started picking up that who used it. So I looked at 6 months and then I said, okay, let me look at last 3 months. In last 3 months, we identified that, okay, that has dropped down to now 60,000. And that 60,000 was again segregated depending upon how frequent transactions were happening. So based that, there were segments which were created and there were different pods which were created within the group for calling them up with a different script. What happened is I reduced down the cost for the bank by not having too many hands from the vendor because they were charging you per seat. And I gave them just 60,000 database. And my conversion was 5 times to what it was earlier. So I think I brought a revolution into this bank where people were thinking that, with data, you can do things differently. And then we came out with a lot of different schemes. And when MasterCard came to our office and said, Pamela, wow, what a thought. And they said, can you please come and across the world, can you share these with the other banks? I said, of course, why not? That's an opportunity. So I started my stint in process optimization. That's where I got myself involved. That how can it's not just a matter of how you are currently doing the process. The process was written way back. Can I redesign the process? And that's where my understanding on how the process are being done, how many loops are getting formed, how can I make it straightforward? That's where my stint started into this bank. And then I moved from marketing to the process optimization team.
So that's what's interesting is service opens up scope. Now, when we say service, we don't really mean, I'm not talking about, just taking calls, but the moment you think beyond that, it opens up, so many opportunities which, are available. And what you're saying is that it also involves data analytics. So if you get further into that, that's another area. It's process optimization is forever. because changes keep happening, and every time a change happens, you need to optimize the process, because otherwise it doesn't benefit anybody. So that's very interesting. And what I'm liking from what you're saying is, when you start with a service mindset, it actually opens up so many opportunities for growth in all directions, and industries as well as functions. So I think it's like it's got huge propensity to make a person succeed. So that's very nice. So now just tell me, one there is this change that happens when one moves from say mid management to senior management, in that sense, okay? Because it, of course, part of these seeds get sown even when you're a manager, because you need to deal with many others in an organization, and that's quite challenging. Even during the time we worked, it used to be a challenge to get across to everybody else, because you have many stakeholders. The business guy is your stakeholder, the technology team is your stakeholder, and then there are so many, and plus you have senior management who expects you to do something, give you different outputs. So how important is stakeholder management? Because I think you did a very good job in managing the stakeholders. How does one manage stakeholders? If you could share a few skills that one needs to develop for that.
I'll not say skill, but what I'll just say is one thing which really make people aligned to it is what is in it for me. So even at the senior management layer, they always think about that if I do that, what you're asking me to do, how will I benefit? How will my team benefit? So if you're able to put that across very clear, so that's where you started building up a business case as to indicating that from a senior management standpoint. And I think that started very early for me, where I started looking at and start thinking that if this was my company, how would I do it? And that really helped me start looking at that. If a CEO is looking at things, what is it that he would be looking at? Of course, he would be looking at an option that whatever I invest, I may get the double or the triple of it. Right? It is not, nothing comes, as a freebie. So you have to be very clear that when you're approaching the management, what is it that they're looking for? When you reach to the technology, how are you making them realize that the newer technology get adopted? Your support maintenance goes down, your breakdowns go down. There are more revenues which come in, which makes life easier for you. So once you're able to indicate that what does it mean for them, I think they're more than happy to be part of that. So it's not, now the shift happens from a management to more strategic thinking. And that's where when you start strategically thinking about that, what is in it for me, what is in it for the other stakeholders, and why, if I was in their place, would I really like to invest in it? So when you think from all the angles and you try to put that across, it gets much easier to get the approval for going ahead and working onto it. And that's where my next stint happened, because from the marketing division, I joined this another company which was into a lot of different products, and they were just setting up, and there was a lot of technology which needs to be looked at. So I started reading about it, that what is the right technology, and not just looking at the technology for today. Think about, at that time, nobody used to think about 3 years goals. Everyone used to talk about 5 years goals. So I used to look at from 5 years down the line. If I look at that, this is my vision and I want to take my group to this level, what is the technology I would need then? Because if I start looking at the technology which is present today, maybe it may not survive for long. And the technology comes with a cost. So what I did was I started attending a lot of seminars in order to understand what are the different kind of technology available for service industry or from an operations standpoint. What will help in driving things? What are the processes that need to look like? Because I was also, the part of the division was into loans. So I was also interacting with the RBI. They have their own set of servicing management. So I was part of that. Then the exchange, the SEBI and exchange, they interact with them to understand that how compliance plays a very vital role. So moving, understanding service really help you. That's like, I'll say, my foundation stone. From that, there are various, distributaries, which could be marketing, compliance, audit, training. I tried to get an understanding across in all, so that I can rise into the ladder. I can understand from all the concepts that how every head of the department thinks differently, and then how I need to project if I need approval, because technology is like $1 million project. It's not, it doesn't come cheap. So you need to have a very solid case, and you need to showcase that in 5 years how I'm going to double or triple whatever you're investing today on me. So I think that is what has really helped: attending seminars, understanding technology, looking at what will best fit you, customizing as per your need and requirement, and then taking it forward.
Yeah. So one very interesting thing, I talk to managers off and on in fact, all the time, and many of these middle level managers, managers who are handling teams or handling, the service departments and even large companies. One of the things that, they tell or, they say is that nobody listens to us. This is like you would have heard it many times and so did I. Nobody is listening to us. So, there are certain, and you're putting it very modestly, but, there are certain skills when, of how you are going to present the information that you want to present. How one good thing you said was that, think from that person's point of view, as in, how will it benefit the stakeholders. It's also to do with how you are communicating and how you're able to flesh out things and then present the right thing, because the general tendencies, I have this Excel sheet, okay, let me forward it and keep going. So what the person lowest down the rung is inputting into a spreadsheet is the same thing that is expected that the CEO or the person one down to the CEO will see. So I think what you very modestly said, and I know that you were doing it, was, putting information in a way that is useful to the stakeholder, whoever the stakeholder is. So that's like, yeah, that's it. The way you present, the way you put data. I think data reading is a very important skill in today's time, more so, because of the availability of data, as well as I think there's too much of information now available, which wasn't available a little earlier also. And because so much information is available, to be able to sort out that which is required for decision making or required to be looked into, I think that's a very important thing
That's true,
also.
very true, because some of the information is also misleading. So you just don't have to have one source of truth. You need to do a couple of readings, you need to communicate, you need to talk what the others are doing, attend the forums. These seminars are very interesting. There are NASCOM forums which happen, attend them. That really are the eye openers that tell you that what others are doing and how differently that they're doing. So that gives you a very holistic picture when you start looking things in that direction. Because the idea is, today, if you grow and the revenue doesn't happen, then the company cannot grow. If the company cannot grow, you cannot grow along. So I think that's very critical. That so for me, I think the reading never stops. You have to keep on learning new things, and that's when I made a different shift. Now, from becoming playing a captive role, I moved into a vendor management, and I joined this ITS organization, which is based out in US, and that was a great learning experience for me, because now it is not only now when I what I'm doing currently is that I'm transforming the way the operations is being done. So no longer it is, service industry, or it is, calls or emails or chat or doing back office operation. It is now the people are looking for, they are moving, because in this VUCA world, the technology is so rapidly changing, and majority of the work is now being done by the bot. So that's when I realized that I cannot just be a pure operations person, and I need to understand automation a lot. And that's when I started attending programs. I started learning what's happening in automation. So now, with automation coming in, everybody, in service industry, nobody is interested in doing data entry. Nobody is interested in doing a lot of back office work. They really need something that really makes them think out of box. How somewhere there are decisions to be made, rather than just doing the mundane work of doing data entry, processing. So that's where automation came into play. Now I head the division which is running the operations transformation, which is a combination of automation, which is either using robotic process automation, machine learning capabilities. So you put all that together to see whether there is a provision that the work can be done by them and something which cannot be solved by the machine. That's where you get the human intervention involved. So that is what now I've
Yeah.
started working on. I work basically, I just work with US clients at this moment, and they are from various domains. They are from banking industry, wealth management, life sciences, telecom, product engineering, so wide variety of people. But the core foundation, Satinder, is service. It has
Yeah, because you have the customer at the center.
it's
That's
the
the
core.
key. If you have the customer at the center, and invariably, if you have got yourself entrenched in service, you cannot forget the customer
Exactly.
under any
And the
circumstances, and
customers are
that's the
same.
beauty. But
Their behaviors are same, even if they
yeah,
are from different domains. Even the process may be different, but the thought process is same. So that's what I realized.
actually, as humans, yeah, and as humans, we are hard coded. See, we all need attention. We all need, those human requirements have not changed. That's the difference. We want to do different things, but yeah, the basic remains the same. But here I have a question for you. Again, coming back to, many managers who I meet and who I talk to, they say that they don't have time. Now you are talking about learning. So, the moment you tell people that, or, in life, we know that unless you learn, you're not able to move forward because things are changing so much. What do you have to say about that?
See what it's general thing when people say they don't have time. And I keep saying that if I can have time, everyone can have time, because I manage 700 people, different domains, different areas, technology as well as service. So, what I believe is try to put all the activities that you perform into four quadrants. So, wherever, generally, and you try to see that where you spend the time. People say, I prepare my to do list and then I start cutting. Of course, it helps. But what generally happen is that when you don't have time is and you try and look back that what are you doing? You're doing majority of that work which has least impact. It is better to do that job which has higher impact. First, finish that, and then look at what are the activities that are you doing which is having least impact. Can that be delegated? Why are you doing certain activity which is expected to be done from maybe your other colleagues? So, if you want to create a time, there is always time. But if you believe that, I cannot, if you do not delegate and you think that I need to do everything, generally what happens is maximum of your time is utilized on the things which are not meaningful. Maybe it is meaningful, but the impact is not that great. And we spend all our time in there rather than, creating the stories which will have a greater impact for the organization, which in turn will benefit your unit.
Yeah. So it's something that you have to drive
Yeah.
yourself, because nobody else is going to do it for you.
Nobody
That's
can
one
help
thing,
in
because
that.
this time, yeah, and you have to, I think, staying updated in today's times there is no substitute to that. In fact, not today's times, actually, in any time. I think at work, if you're not updating yourself with whatever is happening around, it's difficult to grow with, just work in that sense. So now just tell me, what is the role that technology is playing today? Okay. We all know that there are lots and lots of things that are happening and lots of automation that is happening. So, the human piece of the work or the process will continue to remain, because I just heard you saying that there's an area where if machine learning is not working, then you need to do something about it. Or if if a chatbot, for example, is not able to answer a question for the fifth time or the sixth time, and then it's irritating the customer, means there has to be an intervention and something needs to be done about it, right? So elimination of people, I don't think will ever happen. How much ever we say, it will never happen. But of course, people need to upgrade their skills on an ongoing basis to be able to do the work that's required. So, what is your view on these changes that are happening in technology, and what is the scope for people who are in the operations and the service
See,
space?
I have seen the way, because my unit also works into it. And coming from a service industry, I'm heading the people from a technology stream, because we do a lot of automations. And what I've realized is that people need to upgrade their skill. You cannot no longer be saying that, I have to just do the servicing by picking up the phones or answering the emails, because now with chat GPT, which has come up, and the Gen AI, which is there, I think majority of the roles, not only from the service industry, but even from a basic coding perspective, or from quality or quality analyst, where the technologists are the developers are creating the code and somebody is reviewing that. All those roles, the basic ones, are going to be automated. So it's not only the impact will be into the service industry, it will be all across. So what needs to be done is you upgrade your skill to take a more challenging or improving yourself in terms of what next for me, rather than if I am just a coder, what is the next thing that I can do? Because everything cannot be solved with the basic coding. Maybe I need to upgrade my skill set. And a lot of organizations have set up their own internal university where they are supporting their employees in developing their skill at no cost. And that also what happens in our organization, that when we are seeing that we have started creating a lot of prototypes in respect to that, with Gen AI, the new entrant which has happened, and chat GPT, which has become a big revolution. I think with all these things, now chat GPT can answer within a second. Why should I wait for somebody to come out? And it will be standardized. So why would I have somebody to answer the chat? Maybe something it cannot answer gets pushed. So maybe, but those roles are going to diminish. It will not eradicate, but it will go down. So what is very important is to understand there are still will be certain things which cannot be solved with technology, because technology still does not understand text, right? So it's a long way to go. You need to analyze that what you need to do. There are various roles which are there which will help. So what gets critical is this change management. It becomes very difficult that now when you talk about that, okay, I'm introducing technology, people start fearing that I will lose my job. No, you're not going to lose your job. And that is the company, they create a program around how to adapt to this change. So first you need to bring that change within your team for them to understand that this technology is for their benefit. If you are just doing a routine job, routine mundane work, which is not helping you in your growth or into some learning, how long can you continue like that? You will fizzle out someday. You'll say that I'm not learning anything, I'm not doing anything new. So it is better that I change organization. That is why a lot of attrition happen, because people feel that, okay, if I'm not learning new, maybe I can just increase my salary bracket. But that's not the answer. So it gets very important that stick with the company which is investing in you. And our company really invests on people, that, okay, if we are bringing in technology, but it is not that we are letting you go. We are also upgrading your skill set so that you can take newer, roles and address those challenges.
Yeah. So now, from what I have understood from what you've said so far and what's happening around, is that nothing changes overnight. So it gives you the time and space. Though the pressure is always that something will take away your job and things like that, but the basic learning, basic human skills remain the same. The customers kind of remain the same. A bit of behavioral changes that we see. So staying updated, the base, continuing to update your basic skills of managing work, managing people, and managing stakeholders, I think is always going to remain. It's been a nice, it's been so nice of you to share your journey, and with so much of passion. So just tell me, what is it that what's a message that you would like to give the listeners of this podcast, as in their career development?
See, what I'll say is that in any field you may be in, it doesn't matter. You can change whenever you want to. It's just keep on learning. Look at what are the avenues, the direction that the global things which are happening now. If you look at, there's a lot of work which is going on sustainability, right? So any direction that you choose, read about it, understand it, and feel that will it be the right fit for you, right goal for you to move forward in that direction. So that what I'll say, that it doesn't mean that today I'm into a small role, I'm working into a banking stream. It doesn't mean that you cannot change. Change is inevitable. One thing is that change is good. Understand that. It's not that change is bad. Change is always good for everyone. It makes you think out of box. So I will suggest that if you really are working in one direction and you've been working in that, into stream for a couple of years with no growth happening, I think you need to look for a change. Start reading which direction you need to go in, because you can be a mediocre, of course. It's not that everyone, it's a pyramid, everyone does not rise. But what is more important is, are you satisfied with what you're doing? If you're satisfied with what you're doing, it is great. But if you're not, and I think it makes it more interesting, what I do is I talk a lot to the young crowd, because they come with a lot of ideas and you learn from it. So it's not only that the learning happens from book, or learning happens by attending the seminar. You may have an opportunity, you may not have an opportunity, but communicate. That's what is more important. Speak to people, attend. There are certain forums which are free of cost. Try and look at that, where people are talking about technology. Education does not guarantee success, it just expands the horizon. You can learn new things with new situations which have happened. Just try, communicate, talk with people, listen to the ideas. I think that will give you the direction that you need to take for future. That's only what I want to say, Satyan.
Very nice. Thank you so much for sharing, your insights, and we'll come back to you when
Sure.
we
Any
need more
anytime,
information
please, Satyan.
and more
Okay.
guide.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Bye
Thank you so
bye.
much.